mouth, right? You're very much in thought there, my friend.
Deep in thought, meditative thought. Happy Thursday, man.
Yeah, lekker. How are you doing, my friend? Is everything all right? Can you hear me clearly?
Yeah, I hear you loud and clear. Beautiful day in Cape Town. It's always teasing us. It pretends to be spring and then it goes back into winter. So we're just going through a wintry day in spring.
Make up your mind, Cape Town.
Yeah, never will.
Amazing, man. Thanks for joining me live today, my friend, as always. And for those tuning in, glad to be here and thanks for making the time. If you've got any questions, please let us know. Like today, we're going to be unpacking an interesting topic. It is basically just understanding where, if you're starting out as a business owner, where do you put your money first? So I think everybody knows then starting a direct-to-consumer business, you're going to need some form of marketing in order to generate sales. I think that's like a no-brainer for everyone. Like I think everybody is safe to assume that most people now know in the world that we live in that social media marketing, paid ads, whatever form of marketing you want to do and you feel comfortable with, it is extremely important that you focus on marketing, because without marketing, demand won't exist, and without demand, your business won't survive. So when it comes to creating that demand factor, I think a lot of people have asked me in the past, Yandre, where do I spend my bucks first when I start out? When I'm starting out, when I'm starting a new business, what is the best platform to really put my money into? And where am I going to see the best returns? And the options are usually, especially on the paid ad side, John, I don't know if there's any other channels that you've considered and that you've seen success with, but I think the three big choices people have available when it comes to running paid advertising is Meta ads, Google ads, TikTok ads. And the traditional business owners starting out, they don't have sufficient funds to do all three. I mean, if you can do all three, that'll be amazing. However, if you're starting out and you're bootstrapping, where do you put your money first, and where do you most likely see the highest probability of success? So that is what we're going to be unpacking today. That was a mouthful as an introduction, but I wanted to give some context to how we've got into this topic, because as an agency, we work with a lot of clients and we've worked with a lot of business owners in the past. So for us, that's one of the common questions we see all the time is like, where do I put my money first, and where am I going to get the best returns in order to keep bootstrapping and growing my business?
Yeah, I mean, it's a valuable topic for a lot of people. And I think as entrepreneurs, I have a client now who's launching into Festive, and, we've got Meta and Google ads set up, and they're like, okay, but now we want to hit TikTok, and can we do some stuff on LinkedIn? And what about WhatsApp? And the immediate thought is like, well, we're not qualified to do that. But the other comment is, just because you are on every platform doesn't mean you're going to win on every platform. So I think this is going to be very valuable for any entrepreneur who's worried about their ad spend and worried about leaving money on the table.
Exactly. So I think from my side, guys, as always, if you've got questions related to the topic or any other business or marketing topics, please feel free to drop it in the comments, and we'll try and get to those questions in due time. And I think we'll try and keep this simple and easy, to understand, because ideally, like we can branch off into all kinds of different nuances. But I think the most important place to start for any business owner is to ask specific questions, is to ask yourself a few questions first. You've got many online gurus that will tell you various different perspectives and pieces of advice. However, we need to understand that any advice that someone gives usually stems from their own hindsight successes and the paths that they've walked. And if you give advice, it's purely from a very isolated viewpoint, because it's only contextual to that person's hindsight story. Okay. So that's why I don't really like giving a black and white advice. So when someone says, Yandre, what should I do? You need to do X. You need to spend money on Google Ads first, hypothetically speaking. Like, that is terrible advice, because I don't have all the nuances that exist with your business. There are an infinite amount of variables that you understand much better than me. So for me to sit here and say to anybody, you need to run ads on Google or Meta or TikTok as a starting point, will just be terrible advice. And I think if anybody gave you such black and white advice without asking real questions first and contextualizing the scenario based to your business, your cash flow, your burn rate and operating expenses and profit margins, without those nuances, it's going to be hard to give you solid advice that you can actually take and practically implement and see success with. So when I share advice, I think, Jono, you're very similar to me, is that I'd rather empower people to make their own decisions. And I think this is the discussion for today, is that we're here to share a framework that we believe, if you follow that framework and you ask yourself these different questions, you will be able to get to the answer yourself based on the nuances of your business. Anything you want to add before we start?
Well, I mean, I'm dying to dive in. I know that you've played this game with a lot of different businesses. I think, just to reiterate your point, I think in all the industries I've worked in, serving clients, people want to be told what to do. They're like, just tell me what to do. And you're so right in that there's just so many different variables. It's like going to a doctor and not telling him what your symptoms are and asking him to diagnose you and prescribe a treatment. You just can't do that. So I agree that the framework is key. I'm desperate to dive in, and I can see a few of your notes here. They're looking very exciting. And I think, the initial calculations that you're about to present, I just feel like they are so valuable, even at an early stage of like conceptualizing a business model, because a lot of people develop a product and then they want to launch in and try and sell it. And I think by doing this maths before you even decide what product to put in your store, is so much more empowering, because you actually see that you have potential to have a profitable paid ad and marketing strategy. So why don't we talk about ROAS, the big word of the day?
Yeah, man. So I think, like, what people need to understand, it all starts with a few simple questions. And when you unpack those questions, I want to believe that you will be inclined to make better decisions. And as part of that, you'll be able to determine whether you should actually be on Google Ads first, or TikTok or Meta. So, like I said, essentially the first place to start and the first question you need to ask yourself is that if I am going to run ads on a platform, the biggest mistake most businesses don't make is not knowing how much money they can actually spend on that platform to acquire a customer. Okay, so when new business owners come and chat to me about ideas or businesses that they want to scale, or products that they want to launch into the market as a business, and we talk about marketing channels, the first thing I usually ask is, how much profit is actually in the product? Meaning, like, what is your actual gross profit margins like? And it's very hard to make a business profitable, to acquire a customer, pay your transaction fees, pay your other additional merchant fees and supplier fees and software fees, if you have low profit margins, especially if you're starting out and you're going to have to find customers yourself. Now, I spoke to someone in this week and they said, Yandre, there are a lot of businesses with low gross profit margins that are doing exceptionally well and are crushing it and scaling and growing profitably. And I said, yes. One thing we need to understand is that low gross profit margins, that game still works and is very, can work for a lot of people. However, then most of those people, if you're going to ask what businesses they have and how their businesses are structured, they will tell you that, most of their products are in a lot of the discounts in the country, or they are supplying wholesale to the retailers. So essentially, they are selling products based on a ton of volume, and they're not selling one product at a time, and they don't have to pay for every single purchase that happens in the business. They might have a discount in their network, and they might supply a discount, and the initial order might be 3 million rand. Now, 20% gross profit on a hypothetical million rand order is 200K profit that you can invest back into your business. Okay, so we need to understand that there are nuances. And the first nuance is, what is your gross profit margins? And is it actually healthy? Now, if you ask whether it's healthy or not, that can become how long is a piece of string. And that's what I'm saying is that if your objective is to launch a business online and to do your own marketing and acquire customers with your own money, and every single purchase that you have will have some cost attached to it, ideally you want healthy gross profit margins. And the question then becomes, what does healthy gross profit margins look like? And just as a benchmark, I'd say you would want to aim for anything between 40 to 60 to 70% gross profit margins in your products. Now, if we had to pick a number just for the hypothetical case study that we will build today, let's say that you have 100% markup. Okay, so if you're buying the product for $50 and you're selling it for $100, or if you're buying jeans for $500 from overseas and you're selling it for $1,000, that is 100% markup. Okay, because you have put 100% more profit into the actual sale or revenue that you can get back. And then the gross profit margin, however, this is where a lot of people get confused, is that gross profit margin and markup is not the same thing. Markup is what you stack on top of the cost, guys. And if the cost is 50 and you add another 50, then that's 100% markup. But gross profit margin is worked backwards. So markup is worked from the actual cost of the product upwards, and gross profit margin is worked from the retail price backwards to the cost. And that becomes a percentage. And gross profit margins can never be more than 100%. So if someone says my gross profit margins are 100%, well, that's impossible. Then you say physically air, and then someone has given you that air. Gross profit margins can't be more than 100% because it is what's left percentage-wise in the actual product. Okay. Now the question is, what is a healthy one? What does a healthy GP percentage look like? I'm going to say 50% for the hypothetical case that we want to build today. Now, the first question people, as I said, need to ask themselves, and if you're taking notes, this is the time to make the note, because it's the first little golden nugget that we're sharing today, is that you need to understand what your target cost of acquisition and target ROAS needs to be if you're going to advertise on a channel. Before you pick a channel, so some people just randomly pick channels based on someone's advice. Before you pick a channel, you need to ask yourself, how much can I, and how do I know if I acquire that customer, that the actual profit left is enough to run my business with? Okay, so that formula is really simple. So when we say cost of acquisition, The acronym for that is CAC, C-A-C, for those taking notes. If someone says CAC, they're not swearing at you. They're actually just saying like, hey, this is what it's costing you to acquire a customer. And when someone says ROAS, what they're saying is this is the return on your advertising spend. That's what ROAS stands for. Return on advertising spend. Not return on investment, because that could mean a billion different things to a billion different people. But return on advertising spend, meaning what did I spend into the channel? What did I get back into from that channel? Okay. And those two metrics should be answered with this one question. Because once you understand those two metrics, you will be able to identify whether the paid ads strategy, one of the other big issues. People don't know when the paid advertising strategy is working or not, because they don't know what metrics to look at in order to determine if it's actually successful or not. And if you don't know what metrics to track, then you will not know whether you should be able to, whether you're actually going in the right direction or not, really. That's the bottom line. You'll be flying completely blind. It's like getting onto a plane with a pilot that's blindfolded, and he's saying, you know, well, let's leave this up to fate. If it's meant to be, we will get to where we need to be safely. It's like, as much as I am spiritual, philosophical, and want to flow with life, I would go, if that had to happen to me, you know, if I was in an airplane like that, I'd probably want to get out as quickly as possible.
Find parachutes.
Yeah. So the bottom line here for this first question, guys, is how much can you afford to spend in order to acquire a customer, aka CAC, and what does your ROAS need to be? And that calculation is very simple. So if you guys are taking notes, here's the calculation. You want to take the number 1, and you want to then divide that by your gross profit percentage as an actual number. Okay. So if the gross profit percentage is 50, then you want to say 0.50. So you're writing the percentage as it was a numerical value. All right. So you're going to say 1 divided by 0.50. Now, if anybody is sitting with a calculator in front of them trying to calculate that, you will see that the answer, if you had to divide 1 by 0.50, will be 2. Okay. So 2 is essentially the ROAS that you require from the paid advertising channel in order to cover the cost of the product. Because that ROAS metric and target ROAS that you've now identified, it includes your profit margins. And therefore, if you meet that ROAS, you'll be able to cover the actual product cost itself. So you'll be break even. Okay, so this is what we call your break even ROAS for those paying attention. So if you guys, if you have questions, drop it in the comments. I want to actually know if people are still listening. Maybe just drop a 1 in the chat. If you're watching somewhere, I don't know where you're watching, but maybe just press a 1 in the comments that I still know that you're listening and paying attention, that there's actually value in this for you. Or just say yes or something, just so that I know that I'm not wasting my time and we have to end this live because it's not worth anybody's time.
While you're going for it there, Andrea, I'm just adding some banners here so that we can all make see what you're saying visually. So there's your 1 divided by 0.5. Yep. That's your 1 divided by your GP. You mean you needed 2 ROAS to get what you're paying for, basically.
Yeah, that's exactly it. So we got a few people paying attention. That's great. Happy that you're finding value in this. So the first metric is target ROAS. Okay, that's the first most important thing. How do we get it? We divide 1 by our percentage as a numerical value, and that will give you the break-even ROAS. Now we need to figure out, because remember, guys, we're not making profit yet. Okay, this is just covering the cost of the product. This is not covering the merchant fees that you have to pay, the fulfillment fees, the picking and packing fees, or any of those things. Okay, this is purely just covering the cost of the product. So the next thing you need is a break-even ROAS. A target ROAS to actually make profit. So the question is, how much profit do you want to make ideally? Okay. So hypothetically, if you said, listen, I want to make 20% profit, you can't go and say I want 60% profit because you only have 50% profit left in the product. Okay. So your number, your target profit can only be less of what the actual break-even gross profit margin is. So if the gross profit margin is 50%, then you can be ambitious and say 40, but that is most likely going to be a little bit unrealistic if you had to cover rent and salaries and fees and everything else. So a safe assumption to make would be to say 10 to 20% profit. Okay. So what you can do then, the next step of the formula, where we're now calculating the target ROAS, is you divide 1 by 0.50, and then you minus it by the profit that you want to make, which is 0.20. And that then will give you a ROAS of 3.33. Okay. Now, what you're telling your media buyer or your marketing person or your agency, hopefully your agency is giving you these, numbers. But this is essentially what you now need to make profit back from the advertising. So before you pick a channel, you need to know, I need a 3.3x ROAS in order to cover the cost of the product and hopefully make some profit that I can reinvest back into the business. Okay, so that is the first piece of information that we want to share with you today. That's the first nugget. That is all I have to say on this. It's just, I think most people don't know that they have to calculate these things. And that's why they never know if they're heading in the right direction or not. And that's why they say to the agency or the media buyer that you guys are not good enough, but there's no objective way to actually define if that is true or not. And that is also why a lot of small business owners spin their wheels in a billion different directions, because there's no clarity guiding them on what to fix and what to optimize and what's actually wrong. So I hope there was value in that.
Yeah, I mean, I think you've broken it down pretty well. And I think, when we release the recording for this, we'll chuck some of those calculations into the comments. The next thing for me, Andre, that comes up a lot is this paranoia, like I said, leaving money on the table, the fear of missing out. And, someone will hear, oh, I heard my mate, he's got an online store and he's absolutely killing it with TikTok advertising. TikTok is the new best thing. I know that 2 years ago, TikTok had the lowest cost per click or cost per acquisition, cost per click out of all of the different platforms. I know Gary Vaynerchuk says that the lowest cost per lead is on LinkedIn. So there's B2B, there's B2C, there's high ticket offers, there's bulk retail. There are all of these different variables at play when it comes to making money online. And I think it's pretty important to understand what you're selling and how it fits into the greater ecosystem before even picking a platform. So now that we know that there's enough GP, say for instance, I have a chocolate business and my GP is 60%, and I know I've got capacity and I've got ad budget, but now I want to know where I need to be placing my ads. It'd be very easy for me to just say, well, let's spread the bets and put 1,000 Rand a day into each of the platforms. So I'm curious about what methodology we can follow to actually make the right decision, the right calculated decision, instead of going on gut feel.
Yeah, I love it, man. I think that's such a great question, because when you speak to someone at a braai, they're going, oh, I'm killing it with Google Ads. And then what happens is that person tries Google Ads and it doesn't work. And it's a situation where, it might have been a different industry, different product, different targeting style, different type of, ad strategy, or it was just never, the search intent wasn't necessarily enough for that specific product that person was selling. So I like building frameworks, and that helps make better decisions. And I'm going to maybe just share my screen quickly, because this is really the only way that I can explain this. So there's 3 questions I would want to ask myself if I was deciding on whether to advertise on Google, Meta, or TikTok. So here's a fun fact. TikTok is really not the best platform to get the most efficient ROAS consistently. Do some brands have lower cost per acquisition on TikTok? Yes, absolutely. Are there people crushing it on TikTok ads? Absolutely. Is TikTok as consistent as Google ads and Meta ads when it comes to growing a business online and scaling those campaigns to deliver predictable revenue and profits? No. TikTok is the most volatile paid ads channel at the moment. Yes. So I think from that's more from a direct to consumer point of view. The creatives run at fatigue very quickly. It needs constant monitoring more than anything else, like literally, multiple touch points or multiple check-ins, I'd say per week, where some campaigns on Google Ads or Facebook ads, you can check in once a day, once every second day, where with TikTok, it could go skew any minute. So you have to be really hands-on. And we normally add TikTok as a luxury or as a brand awareness play. So the CPM on TikTok, the cost per mile, meaning how much money you have to spend to get 1,000 people to see your brand or message or product, is the cheapest out of all the platforms. So TikTok is a great place to build awareness. Great, amazing place to build awareness. However, if you're really trying to take money and convert it into profit, unfortunately, from what we've seen, and we spend probably like 20, 30 million. No, I'm lying. We probably spend more than 50 to 60, 70 million worth of rands on ads per year, if not close to 100 million. I mean, 2 of our brands alone spend close to 30 million a year, 40 million a year. So with all the clients we have, it's probably even more, maybe 150 to 200 million rand that we invest into ads on an annual basis. I probably have a stat somewhere, but that's what I can tell you. Like, it's not that we're sitting here spending 10K on a few different platforms and testing one business. Looking at all the businesses we've worked with, looking at all the channels that we've advertised, looking at all the money that we've spent, I think TikTok is unfortunately the most inconsistent. However, brand awareness cost is very cheap. So the only 2 platforms to really consider starting out, when you're starting out, let me just put a disclaimer. The only 2 platforms that's worth considering when starting out and wanting to bootstrap your business is Meta ads or Google ads. Why? Because they are a lot more consistent once you get the ROAS in check. Okay, so the first question I normally ask myself is the following. Is there intent in the market for this product? Okay, because if I was someone who wanted to promote a product or service, I obviously want to go where the demand is already, because the cost per acquisition normally, hypothetically, would be lower in those channels because the demand is already there. Now, some people would say, because the demand is there, the cost per acquisition might actually be higher because you're competing with a lot of other people. However, if done correctly and done strategically, that shouldn't really be too much of an issue. So we ask ourselves, is there enough intent in the market? And with intent, an objective way to verify intent is to ask ourselves, how many people are searching for this product or solution on a monthly basis? Okay. And that, my friends, I'd say if you've got more than 5,000 people searching for the solution, specific product or solution or keyword or key phrase that is tied to the product or service that you're selling, then I would say Google Ads would be a great place to start. Now, a lot of people are like, why Google Ads and not Facebook? Well, Google is a place where people go to actually look for the product or service that they already have in the back of their mind. So they have an idea of what they're looking for. There's a pain point that they're trying to solve, and the intention is to solve that pain point, which means that if the right product showed up while they were searching for a solution, that you have a higher probability of getting the sale. On social media channels like Facebook and Instagram, you interrupting people in their feed and you trying to convince them that there might be an existing pain point that they're not aware of yet, or maybe they're aware of the pain point and now you're trying to convince them that the product is actually the best one to solve that for them. So there's a lot of work that has to be done on a social front because the intent might not necessarily be there yet. So you have to create that intent.
Can we talk about an example there, Yandre? So say, for instance, like back to the chocolate business example, you're saying people might not be Googling beautiful chocolate truffles as a Christmas gift. I mean, they probably will be closer to the end of the year, but say, for instance, in February, they might not be looking. Bad example again, because it's Valentine's. June, no one's looking for luxury truffles. And so the search volume might be very low. When you say luxury truffles, there might not be 5,000 people, but it's something that an opportunistic marketer might want to get sold through Meta. Like you're scrolling and you see a beautiful reel of some beautiful chocolates and you think, oh, wow, that's nice. Oh, look, there's an amazing deal. Oh, let me check out the deal, and then you buy. But that might actually not work on Google, especially because Google's also largely text and search based. So what would be an example of something that would work on Google? Can you give me an example of something where people would be generally searching for it throughout the year?
So here's
maybe a client example.
Yeah, so I mean, this is an example that's fresh in my head. I was chatting to someone who's got pet accessories, and they essentially want to decide whether it's going to be better to put it on Google or Facebook first, because they have a limited budget, like most people. Now, if you're launching pet accessories, the question is at first, okay, cool, what kind of accessories is it? Let's say you're selling dog beds. Now the question becomes, how many people a month are searching dog beds? If it's more than 5,000, I would almost want to look into Google Ads first, because people are already searching for dog beds. All you have to do now is tell them that you have dog beds and make sure that you can explain the value of your dog beds better than the other competitors, right? I mean, this is just logical sense. Like, people are already searching for dog beds. Why not run an ad that targets those people and just show them that you have dog beds and that yours is better than competitors? Now, the same approach can be taken online from a meta standpoint and say, cool, well, I now have to go and target pet lovers, and I have to hope that that pet lover doesn't have a dog bed yet. So you're making a sort of like a calculated decision, but it's not objective. It's not proof. It's not factual proof to know that this person has a dog bed or doesn't have a dog bed. Or it could be a situation where they have a dog bed, but they might be looking for a better one or a new one. So you don't know really any of these scenarios. So therefore, you have to interrupt that person in their feed who is currently a dog lover and who might have searched dog beds online, because Facebook knows these things too. And now you have to visually show them and explain to them why your dog beds are the best. Now, from a dog bed point of view, like, you can almost use both. But what's going to give you the highest probability of success? Because the question is not which one is fun and exciting and can work. The question is which one has the highest probability of working, because in this case, they both will work.
Yeah.
So in this case, I'd say, well, why not run actual Google ads for people already searching dog beds and start there, because that is where the intent is. Okay. Now, office furniture is another example. Like, this is more on a contrast example, because in this case, office furniture, selling that on Facebook is very hard to do, because the person who's looking for office furniture might have a specific look and feel in mind, a specific theme in mind, a specific type of office furniture in mind, etc., etc., etc. So interrupting a person in their feed and then trying to answer all those specific questions with one video ad or a UGC ad will be very difficult to do. So therefore, you want to understand, is people actually searching for office furniture online on Google? And then go, if so, great. Let me rather target those people and go and explain to them what type of office furnitures I have. Ideally, you can do a mix of both strategies here, where what we've seen works really well in the office furniture space. An example is to target people on Google Ads with office furniture, and then remarket to them on Facebook as a reminder to stay top of mind. And this is why I always say, all these channels technically work together in order to help you lower the cost of acquisition and help you build a better business. However, if you had to pick one and start out with one, this is the framework that I would follow. And it starts with, is there search intent in the market? If so, well, there's a good chance that is where you're going to see the quickest wins and the highest probability of success when it comes to spending money and getting money back in the next 30 to 60 days.
Two questions that come out of that, Andre. The one is, maybe you can answer the second one next, which is about competition. But is there an argument for the broadness of your category? So, for example, you mentioned office furniture, and we compared that to the chocolate truffle. So, a chocolate truffle is, you could very easily bundle a chocolate truffle deal as a gift that people would feel compelled to buy, even if they didn't really want it for themselves. And chocolate truffles, like a box of chocolates, is one of those kinds of things that, no one really ever knows what they're going to get, but they're pretty sure it's going to be a bunch of delicious chocolates. It's an easy sell if they're beautiful and it's nicely packaged. So you can sell that kind of to many people. Whereas, as you said, office furniture is the kind of thing where people might want to go according to a certain what's the word I'm looking for? Pinterest board. They might have a particular style in mind. And so on Meta, you could target someone with a very specific deal to make the sale. But on Google, you would target people who are having like a broader general search. Is that also fair to say that a broader product category is better on Google?
Yeah, on Meta, you can add bells and whistles to the offer that gets people more interested and creates more interest and intent, right? On Google, you might not be able to do that to the extent that you will be able to do it on Meta, because Meta is nice and visual. So you can use those visual elements to increase the probability of intent, or to increase the likelihood of someone buying. However, there are questions that you're asking and the answers lie in following the next two questions, in this framework. So let me quickly unpack then what's remaining in this framework. So the first question we ask ourselves, and they all work together. Okay, I think there's a lot of people sitting there going, but what if this, what if this, what if that? And if we follow the whole framework, a lot of those questions will be answered. The first question is there intent in my market? If there is intent, then I would focus my efforts or my thoughts and my ideation on Google Ads. If there's a low amount of search intent, I would focus my efforts and ideation and concept and the rest of my mental bandwidth into something like Meta ads. Okay, so that's the first step. That's the core divider. All right. Then we go down and you'll see here, if we have search intent and it's over 5,000, then the next question is, how complicated is it to articulate the benefits and the USPs of this product or service? Okay. There are a lot of companies we've worked with who have got amazing products, but explaining to people the benefits and the unique selling points of that product is not something you're going to be able to do in a 3 to 10 second video. All right. So it requires education. So that's why I said, yeah, objectively, if we had to objectify this question a little bit further, the question is, how much education will you have to do to get someone to feel like there's value in the product and that the price is actually worth it? Okay. So what is the intent in the market? Is there enough search volume? Why not start with the channel that's already got the intent as opposed to the one where you have to go and create intent? Then the second question is, how complicated is it to actually articulate the benefits and the unique selling points of that product? If it is very complicated from a Google standpoint, if we're in the Google channel now, then we're going to go down to the last question, which is, what is the price of the product? And is it considered to be expensive? And expensive from an objectified viewpoint would be anything more than 3,000 Rand online. That is considered as a medium to high luxury product, a high-end item. Okay. There's very few people who just randomly pull out a credit card and buy a 3K product. Do a lot of them exist in South Africa? Absolutely. Is it a huge percentage of people? No. So these are the three questions we ask. And I'm going to tell you now quickly a few examples. So if we were on the Meta side and the search intent was low and it was very complicated to articulate the benefits and the unique selling points, we'd say yes or no. If it wasn't very complicated to articulate those benefits, then I would say, what is the price of the product? Is it more than 3K or not? If it's not, then a normal Meta ad straight to a product page should be sufficient. Okay, so here's where we go into the different scenarios and the different targeting strategies or different marketing strategies. And again, this is a very rough framework. I'm not saying that you're going to be able to get a 5 or a 10x rise tomorrow if you start following this framework with your marketing. This is just a framework to decide where to put your time and efforts. Okay, so the first question is, what's the intent? If it's low intent, we go to Meta. If the product is very complicated to explain, we will then have to find a way to explain that. And that will usually be done through videos, which I've put at the bottom here. The second question then is, what is the price of the product? Is that more than 3,000 Rand? If no, then essentially in this case, Meta ads to a long form sales page will be very crucial. Now, there's three end scenarios here, and I hope I'm articulating myself well enough that everybody understands. Maybe just let me know if this makes sense to you, and if you've got questions, let me know as well. Just say yes if this is making sense so far. But there's technically three different outcomes. The first outcome is just running an ad straight to a product page. The second outcome is running an ad to a product page with explanatory videos or videos that can help further articulate the benefits and the unique selling points of the product. And then the third scenario is where you actually run the ads to a long form sales page. Actually, there's 4 outcomes. Sorry. The meta ads to a long form sales page, and a long form sales page is basically like a funnel, like an actual page that's quite lengthy, that explains every single possible thing that is beneficial about the product, and it tells a story about the product, and you actually feel like you're reading an advertorial more than you are reading a product description, if that makes sense. And then the last outcome here is running meta ads to a long form sales page with videos, is where you combine the written education, like an advertorial, with explanatory videos as well. Because the problem a lot of people face is that when it comes to picking a channel, not only do they pick the wrong channel, but they also follow the wrong strategy from articulating the value of the product standpoint. Because remember, if people are not buying the product, it's because they're not convinced that the value of the product is enough and justifies the price. If the value was in the product and they understood the value, and the value was clear, and the benefits were clear, and the unique selling points were clear, then I want to believe that the price that you associate with that product shouldn't be an issue for them. However, if you did a terrible job at explaining the value and explaining the uniqueness of the product in comparison to competitors, and the competitor might, let's say, hypothetically be 10 Rand cheaper than you, there's a high probability that someone is not going to say yes to you, but rather yes to a competitor. So our job as marketers is 2 things: picking the right channel, understanding what metrics to track to determine if it's a success or not. And then thirdly, what strategies are we going to put in place to articulate the value of this product to the person who's going to be visiting that product page? Okay. And those
Jandre,
yeah, go for it.
So, question, just in terms of complexity of product and those 4 different types of sales. So you've got the product page and then product page with videos, the long form sales letter, and then the long form with the video. Could you just run through 4 examples where each of those might be appropriate?
Yeah, so let's do this, right? Let's start with the intent side. Let's start at the top. Let's say that we are selling a new brand of hydration products. Okay.
Great.
Now, I'm going to go to Google to search volume trends and on Google Ads or Google. You can go to Google Trends and look at what people are searching for, etc. Google has built-in tools that you can leverage. I'm going to ask myself: is more than 5,000 people searching for hydration products at the moment? Now, in the hydration example, there are most likely, let's say there's not. Let's say, electrolytes and hydration is a very niche thing. And let's pretend for now, I'm not going to do the research now because that could take, if we actually had to go through the whole freaking exercise, I think that might take too long. So let's say we're selling a hydration product and there's not enough people searching for hydration. Let's say this was 2 or 3 years ago, where people weren't really aware of the fact that they have to stay hydrated and certain electrolytes can hydrate you faster and better, etc. Then search volume for this kind of product would have been low. So I would have then chosen Meta. Now, the question is it difficult to explain the benefits of electrolytes? No, it's not really that complicated. It's really just a matter of listing 3 or 4 health benefits, in my opinion. So therefore we go, no. Then we ask ourselves, is the price of the product more than 3,000 Rand? No, it's probably going to cost for like 400 or 500 Rand a box or whatever. So therefore, meta ads to a straight product page will be sufficient to start with. I'm not saying that you shouldn't add videos. I'm not saying that you shouldn't build a long form sales page. I'm not saying that you shouldn't try and articulate the value any better by using certain tactics. I'm just saying that will be sufficient to start if you had the bare skeleton bones of a strategy. Okay. Now, in the next example, in the day of that we live in now, a lot of people are searching for hydration products. So therefore, we can go to Google. Again, is the complexity of this product difficult to articulate? No. Is the price more than 3,000 Rand? No. Then Google Ads to a normal product page would be sufficient. Okay. Is that going to be the best thing that you can do? No, but it's a good place to start. All right. So let's say now that we have a bunch of competitors in the market on this hydration brand. Okay. So we have a hydration brand, but there's hydration brands popping up all over the place. What would Yandre then do? Well, let's say that we go with the meta approach. I would say, cool. We're still in the meta. Is the benefits complex to benefits difficult and complicated to explain? No, it's not. However, in explaining the value better, we will look better than competitors. All right. So it's not that it's complicated, but I would want to explain as much as possible, because now, because of all the competition we have, there's a lot of noise. So if every single competitor says that their electrolytes are helping you hydrate faster and you make the exact same claim, there's a good chance someone is most likely not just going to be convinced. And you're probably going to have to do a lot more of convincing. So the higher the competition in the market, the more convincing you have to do that your product is better, right? Just logical sense. So therefore, we might branch off into the yes. It's not that it's difficult to articulate the value. It's just that it's going to be very important to articulate the value, because that's how you're going to be looking. That's how you improve your marketing strategy compared to competitors. Okay. So then the question becomes, do we have a price of a product that more than $3,000? The answer is no. So now I would run meta ads to a long form sales page / advertorial page. And how an advertorial page almost looks, or a long form sales page looks, do I have an example that I can share with you guys?
Oh, I've got a few.
You want to share one quickly, just to give
people?
Yeah.
I'll share one from my old business, because I just know that they follow the format. So there's a specific format that I followed when I was developing these, which was by Russell Brunson. And so I think this is it. Yeah. This is cool. So it's got all the bells and whistles. Where should I share? Should I drop in the comments?
Yeah, just maybe share your screen there if you can. You can share slides.
Okay. So So I actually I popped it in the comments there, Andre. I'm on my phone, so you're gonna have to open it on your screen.
I need to get that link from you. Just WhatsApp it to me.
Oh, WhatsApp it to you there. Give me 1 second.
This is how we prove it live.
Yeah.
So let me quickly share my screen. Stop sharing. I'm going to share new screen. Okay, cool. So this is what a long form sales page looks like. A traditional product page would have the product image on the left, would have the headline and the price on the right. Okay, everybody knows what I'm talking about. This is what a long form sales page looks like. It tells a story from top to bottom, answering certain questions, answering certain concerns, addressing certain unique selling points and benefits that fit into the story structure that you're telling. So it's not just a quick product description. It's enough written information for someone to make an educated decision.
Who's that guy?
You must meet this guy. So long story short, guys, a long form sales page, this is what it looks like. And all it is just a structure that you use in order to do more written education, so that the person on the other side clearly understands the product, or better understands the product, and therefore can make a better decision when it comes to how they spend their money. Okay. So you want to say something quick?
Well, I was just on the topic. I know we're going to get back into ad spend now, but on the topic of long form sales pages, we used to sell very complicated products, and it was a multi-step thing. So we had to convince people that Banting or the low carb diet was the right, was scientifically legit, because there's a lot of fear mongering around it. Then we had to convince people that the way that we delivered it was like a model that worked. In other words, you can go and get like the food lists to eat when you want to go keto for free. And we had to explain that when you do it in a specific format, surrounded by accountability with lectures, that it was more effective. And then we also had to convince them that if they did it, they would be able to achieve it. Remember when we spoke about the value equation last week, we spoke about how likely are they to succeed. So we had to convince them that they could believe in themselves to do it. And then we had to convince them that the price was worth it. So it's like an incredibly laborious sale. And so for us to have that long form sales letter where we have scientific evidence, which helps a lot of people who are fearful, Then we had peer proof, so testimonials from people who had done it, who had worked. We had to really pile in a lot of information to convince people that this product would work and that they could get a result. So that's when the long form sales page becomes really important. And just the other point I was going to make is Russell Brunson co-wrote a book called Copywriting Secrets. I think it's called Copywriting Secrets, and it's a brilliant book that outlines how to write a great long form sales page.
Yeah, man. So I think that's exactly it, right? Like long form is used to do a bit more education, especially when you're in a saturated space where people can make ideally just a more of an educated decision on what product to choose. And if your competitors are not doing it, that is one way to stand out from your competitors. Okay. So let's move on quickly. We're looking at search intent. We now know that we have to ask ourselves, how complicated is it to explain the product, or do we have a lot of competition in the market that would need further articulation and explanation on why we're unique? And if that is no, a straight product page will be fine. If that is yes, then a long form sales page will probably be a better bet. And let's say we were selling something like an iPhone, but it was a brand new phone that nobody knew about. Like it's a brand new brand. It's nameless really to most people. Then the exercise would look like this. Is there intent in the market for this type of phone? Probably not, because it's dominated by Apple, Samsung, and some other brands. So I'm probably going to go to Meta. Or we can ask ourselves, maybe people are searching for cheap alternative phones to iPhone or something like that. Is there enough search volume for that? We'll go to Google. For the sake of this exercise, let's just focus on Meta for now. So we say no, the people are not really searching for this type of brand or product, or really it's very unique. So let's go with no. So we're on Meta now. Is the benefits and the unique selling points of this product to explain quite complex? Yes, it needs a lot of education, because people need to be convinced that it's going to be better than a Samsung, that it's going to be better than an Apple at the price obviously they're selling it at. You get entry-level Samsungs these days, you get entry-level Huawei's. You now need to build trust and credibility with that audience, and you need to explain to them why this phone is potentially better. Okay. So therefore, you'd most likely want to go with the long form sales page approach. And then the last question is this product more than 3,000 Rand? And let's say it is, then you most likely want to then use Meta ads to a long form sales page with videos. And I don't know if you ever had to go onto an Apple website, they've got such a beautiful way of mixing text with graphics and animations and videos in order to get you to fully comprehend the power of their products. They're great at marketers. They're great marketers, Apple. Like, I sometimes believe that they're better at marketing than actually creating great products. I'm not saying the products are not great. I'm a huge Apple fan. However, I believe that they're better marketers than they're actually tech creators. And that's what we need to ask ourselves. It's like, how do we get better at marketing? And this framework can obviously help you do that. If you had to understand the difference between picking a channel between Google and Meta. So let's say that people are searching for this type of phone. So if people weren't searching for this type of phone, maybe you were selling. I think there was a phone these days. It's like a small. It's like a phone that the battery lasts for like 20 days, and it's solar powered, and it's encrypted. I don't know, like it's like basic.
I've got an example for you, Andre. I've got an example for you. The green screen phone is coming back in, especially for parents who want their children to have phones like we did in the 90s, but who don't want them to have access to screens and WhatsApp.
So the thing is, people are not really searching for that yet because they don't know it exists. But there's an opportunity for you to create intent under those parents once they actually understand the product. So therefore, you would gravitate to Facebook. Therefore, you would gravitate to visual long form sales pages where you explain the value of this product. And therefore, maybe you would incorporate some videos as well, so that people can actually see what the benefits look like, or what the actual phone looks like, and the quality. Maybe drop the phone 5 meters onto a concrete floor and show how durable it is. Like, that is you articulating the value without someone having to guess or. So in my mind, the other example would be, I've got a someone in my network who does smartwatches for kids. So the smartwatch allows the parents to track where their kids are. It allows the kids to text and phone their parents when they need to. And it's a great tool for any parent to have, especially for kids, because obviously you've got a watch so you look cool, but you can phone your parents when you need to, and your parents can see where you are at all times. Now, that watch 5 years ago, nobody knew that watch existed. So the demand in the market wasn't there. However, in essence, now today, a lot of people are looking for watches like that. Okay. But in the case where we were 3 years ago, you would have to go through the Facebook channels in order to create that demand and target parents and show them and drive them to a long form sales page. Because if you just drove them to a product page, I'm not saying you're not going to see success with it, but you can see so much more success if you had to write a story to a parent. Have you ever wondered where your kid, like, are you a parent that, is a little bit worried about your kid's, safety, but you don't want to give him a phone yet because he's not old enough? And there's certain things on YouTube and these streaming channels that you don't want them to see yet, and all that kind of, like, tell a little bit of a story about that. And that will allow the parent on the other side to go, oh, this is exactly what I'm looking for. Today, however, a lot of people are looking for trackers for their kids. So therefore, you might actually gravitate to Google as an option as well.
It's interesting because what you're also saying is that like more innovative, what do you call it, like trailblazer type products that aren't necessarily established are going to do much better in an environment where you can call them out. I mean, I just know from scrolling at the moment, every 5 minutes someone says, like, I'm 40 and I'm a father of 2, and somehow my algorithm knows that's like backwards. So I get, men after 40 all of a sudden have this problem, and that's the hook. There are like 1,000 different problems I could have, and there could be a product for, but that call out happens, and then someone's introducing, connecting with me on a problem and trying to sell me a new product that I hadn't even realized that I might even need. And I was definitely not going out to Google that. So it's interesting. Basically, what you're saying is if you're launching something new that the market might not even know about, it's definitely going to do better on Meta.
Yeah, 100%. So to summarize this, and I think it's time to move on to the last point that we're trying to make here. But I think to summarize this, it's basically 3 questions. What's the search intent? Is there enough people searching for this product? If so, why not look into Google first? I'm not saying you have to absolutely go with Google, but that's where I would put my energy and see if it would make sense. Then I would say, does this product require a lot of education? Does it require me to truly get creative with how I explain to people how it can benefit their lives? If so, then you would most likely want to create a long form sales page. And if the price of the product is more than $3,000, then you want to incorporate elements that gets them to understand the value quicker. So a lot of people have been buying these moose cases. And I met someone the other day. He's like, why is these moose cases so expensive? I was like, have you seen? And he goes, no, I haven't. I was like, bro, check this video. And the guy's like dropping it out of an airplane or something. Or he went from a bungee jumping bridge and it fell on the ground and the phone was fine. And he was like, holy shit, that is incredible. And the iPhone was perfectly fine. I was like, yeah. And he's like, well, that makes sense. And immediately within a 10-second video, he understood why that phone cover was that expensive. And it's because it's very hard to potentially go that extra mile in explaining that with written text. And that's why you use videos. Okay. So in essence, if it's a very simple, basic product that doesn't cost too much, a normal product page will suffice. If it's a product that needs a bit of education and needs some form of convincing, and you want to separate yourself from competitors in the market, you're probably going to want to approach a product page with a lot more wording and text, aka a long form sales page. And if the product price is then more than 3,000 or 4,000 Rand, then you're going to have to showcase certain things about the product that's going to get people to understand the value. Imagine they were walking into a retail store. They would have the ability to pick the product up. They'd be able to have the ability to feel it. They'd have the ability to actually bang it on the table and test it out. Now, you can't recreate that because your environment is online and digital, but you can show them videos that mimic that experience and hopefully gets the same effect, at least as close as possible to that effect.
Yeah.
Okay, so are we
Cool.
good? I hope everybody was paying attention. This can get maybe a little bit. I try to keep it as simple as possible whilst addressing all the different nuances. But it's really just understanding: is there search volume? Is there search intent in the market? Is it a complicated product or not? And is it an expensive product or not? Those three things will help you decide where to put your money and what strategy to follow to make sure that you get most amount of money back from the money that you're advertising, spending on the platform. Okay.
We got a few comments, a couple of people asking for the framework. Andrea, I think you're going to have to PDF that and perhaps drop it into the comments after the show.
What I will do is, I think most people should be in a mailing list. I'll just bomb it off to the mailing list maybe next week. Or what I will do is I'll make a YouTube video about it that explains it maybe a little bit better and share that with everybody. And then there will be a downloadable link on the YouTube channel, which might be pretty cool. Maybe I'll make it pretty for you guys because that's I literally just drew up this morning as I was vomiting out my thoughts. Cool. So the last thing we want to know when it comes to the questions, so we've got two questions now that we're asking ourselves as business owners before we pick a channel. Is one, what is my target ROAS? So how much can I spend on Facebook, and how much do I need to get back in order to make sure that I'm not running at a loss? Okay, so that's the first thing. And I've now I've now taught you guys how to create a break-even ROAS, which is basically just 1 divided by your profit, gross profit margin. That will give you your break-even ROAS. And then if you want a target ROAS, it's as simple as taking 1 divided by the profit ROAS minus the actual profit that you want to make. And that is essentially then the target ROAS that you lead. Then the second question is, does it follow the framework of intent, complexity, and price? And then the last thing I think is what I've seen, at least what people ask is, when should I test a new channel, or how long should I be testing the channel for, or when should I optimize my ads, and when should I scale, or when should I test and optimize or whatnot? So I think this is very crucial. I have seen that because people don't know what their target ROAS should be, they randomly just run ads on a random channel. So they make the mistake of picking the wrong channel. They make the mistake of not knowing what their ROAS needs to be. And then all they do is they spin their wheels for 30 days going, oh, Google is not working, let's try Facebook. Oh, Facebook's not working, let's try TikTok. So 6 months later, they've tried every single channel. Nothing has worked for them. And they go, you know what? This just doesn't work for me. I just need to go back to cold calling or cold emailing or whatever we were doing before. And I'm like, dude, it's not that these channels don't work. It's that you haven't really followed a pragmatic and systematic approach to squeezing the most amount of opportunity out of these channels. Like, you haven't given yourself the highest probability of success or the highest chance of success because, unfortunately, you're either naive or ignorant on how these things work. And that's why we exist. Okay. So I've made all these mistakes myself. So the first question is, when do I test a new channel? And here's the answer. You do not test a new channel unless you have done things better on the existing channel or have done more of the things that's already working on the existing channel. So many business owners jump from Google, Meta, and TikTok literally every few weeks or months, hoping that this time around it will work. However, what they're missing is that they never had the actual guidelines, blueprints, and GPS to get them to levels of profitability on that specific channel, because they didn't know what metrics they had to track. They didn't know what ROAS they needed. They didn't know, what channel to start with that's a better fit for the actual product or service that they're selling. So never do something new unless you can confirm that there's no way that you can do what you're doing now any better. Okay, and I think Hormozi said this, if I'm not mistaken. It is, first you do it better, then you do more of it, and then you do something new. But most business owners do something new. That's all they do. If something is not working, they do something new. They don't even think about the fact that, can we do this any better? And then, funny enough, I see a lot of people, last comment on this before, is just, then I see a lot of people going, we have a healthy ROAS, but now we need to add a new channel. No, you don't need to add a new channel to your marketing. You first have to squeeze all the juice out of that profitable channel. And how you do that, as opposed to spending 10K, you now go spend 20K, 30K, 40K. We literally scaled one of our companies that we've invested in 2023 from 10,000 Rand a month to 1.5 million a month. And we haven't started running TikTok ads yet.
How much a month did they start on?
10 grand.
They were doing revenue of 10 grand a month.
No, we were doing zero revenue. We were spending 10K on our first month in ads.
Jeez, okay.
And then eventually I think we made 10K back that first month. And then we made 30K back the next month. And then nobody went, oh, let's add Google, let's add TikTok. No, we stayed on Facebook up until a point where Facebook wasn't giving us the returns that we needed anymore. So then only did we go to Google Ads. And now only, after spending 2 million Rand, close to 2 million Rand a month on marketing, now only are we going to TikTok.
That's crazy. I mean, I have a few interesting insights there. And the one is that it can go the other way. So sometimes people, like the two factors that really played a role in the industries that I've worked in were the weight loss is very seasonal. And so a lot of people don't actually notice for the first few years that they're running their business that the seasons hurt. You know, for instance, no one's buying a weight loss program in December. Yeah. And so you have to know when to ignore the data. And often people think like, okay, well, I need to switch platforms because I'm, you were talking about not jumping from platform to platform to platform earlier. And a lot of people jump from platform to platform because they think that their ads aren't working, when in actual fact, there's a seasonal downturn, it's school holidays, it's term time, there are various factors at play. And the other thing that happened, especially in smaller niches, is that you actually just cap out. Like you were saying, you have to go and squeeze Facebook until it cannot get any more. And there was a pet store, a very successful online pet accessory and food business. And I remember like the most I've ever spent in a month with Real Meal, I think was like 50,000 Rand or something. And I remember just absolutely like capping out at that. And I was so frustrated. I was like, why can't we just shoot the lights out again? Because when the book came out, it was like a cult and, we couldn't spend enough. And then he said to me, no, well, our online store, we just basically realized our ROAS just drops once we hit 80 grand a month. And that was that. He's like, that's how big the market is. And so there's no point in us spending more than 80 grand a month because the ROAS drops and it becomes pointless. And he was running at a ROAS of 1 because his strategy was to get people onto pet food subscription. So they would earn back their profit in the first sale and make profit. Earn back their ad spend in the first sale and make a profit on their reorder and subscription.
Beautiful.
And so I think a lot of people don't realize, like South Africa does have 55 to 60 million people, but it doesn't really have a massive online shopping market. I don't know how big it is, but it's nowhere near 50, 60 million. And so it's very possible for your product, even if it is the best in its niche, to cap out quite early in the game.
Yeah, 100%, dude. I think that's such a valuable point, is that we've seen the same thing for some businesses. You start spending 400-500K a month and the ROAS just tanks. And now it's, okay, cool. We have squeezed now all the juice that we can out of this. So let's move on to something new. And I think that's the process that people follow. Do it better. Now, the question is, how do you know that you can do it better? Well, first of all, you're obviously not reaching the target ROAS that you should be reaching. That's the first indication that you can probably do it better. Okay. So it's like, we need a 3.3x ROAS to make money. And we're hitting at 2x ROAS for the first 30 to 35, 40 days. Okay, cool. Well, this is an indication that at least we're making some money back. Maybe we can do it better now. And now it's really just speaking to a consultant, speaking to smarter people, chatting to an agency and getting an audit, or having someone challenge your perspectives on how to run these ads. It doesn't mean that you should go and spend more money on it. Like, if you're not profitable because of the target ROAS that you've set, hypothetically it's 3 and you're sitting at 2, you'll be stupid to spend more money because you're bleeding money. You're losing money. You're not making money. So first, you need to do it better. Then you do it better up until the ROAS makes sense. And then you do more. And then once you've done enough to the point where you can realize that there's no much more to squeeze, that's when you add something new. And that's really the methodology that we followed for most of our companies, to be honest with you. And the founders get sometimes frustrated with me because we act as fractional CMOs. So our agreement is that we control the marketing. Like we obviously be open to listening, to hearing, but I'm not going to be a partner in your business and take equity in your business if you're going to tell us what to do. So the first thing is we'll take full accountability and responsibility. We'll put skin in the game, but then you trust us to do what we think is freaking best. And often, we've had relationships where someone goes, "Hey, Yandre, when are we jumping on Google? Should we jump on Google?" I was like, "Relax, we're not there yet. We will get there." It's like, when? I was like, when the data tells us to. When the data tells us to join Google or jump onto Google, that's where we'll do it. Because there's no point in jumping onto Google when you still have energy and resources to invest into the actual channel that's making you money now. Okay. So in essence, it's really just do it better, do more, and then do something new. And I think if you follow that mentality, you will become a better business owner. And also, how long do you test for? I think a lot of people go like, okay, cool. How long do we test for? So it's really not so much about time as about how much data you generate. Because in essence, our brains work linearly, and therefore we assume that we need a time frame because we live in time. However, if you spend 10 Rand a month on Facebook ads, after 90 days, which is usually a good testing phase, 3 months, 10 Rand a day is not going to give you a lot of data. So even after 3 months, you're not going to have enough data to make a good data-driven decision. So it's not so much about time, but it is about how much data is actually pointing in the right direction.
I've got some.
Go for it.
Sorry, no, I was going to say we've got a question here from Digital Universe. Says, when using Google Ads, does it push the ad through its whole Google ecosystem? E.g., the Google ad appears natively on FB, IG, and other Google Meta spaces. And then we've got another one just now.
No, cool. So if you guys have questions, I think we've kind of like said what we wanted to say today. There might be one or two other things that pop up of value. But I think like this was the main topic for today. There's 3 questions we need to ask. What is the actual target ROAS that we need on this specific channel? Then what channel will work? And there's a framework for that based on intent, based on the complexity of the product, based on the price of the product. And then lastly is like, okay, cool. How do we actually spend our energy on this channel? And when do we actually move on to a new channel? So those are the 3 things I think we wanted to share today. To answer the question of Digital Universe, I think, yes, Google Ads, very similar to Meta, allows you to run the ads on all kinds of different ecosystems. However, it comes with preferences and settings. So you can run a Performance Max. Performance Max basically will run it on most of the available channels or available placements. It will run Google Shopping. It'll do some search. It'll do some dynamic. Might even do some YouTube if you've got creatives and content for it. But you can choose. You can choose where you want to run everything. Same with Meta. On Meta, you can say, I only want to run on Instagram, or I only want to run on other third-party networks, or I only want to run on Facebook, or I want to do everything. So yes, the answer is yes. Google allows that option as well.
And then what about using AI and ML to predict your sales forecast using historical data, social trends, etc.? And how available is this tech, and how reliable is it?
Yeah, it is actually a good question. We actually did that for one of our companies. We uploaded 12 months of historical data, and I said to it, please analyze this data and tell me which days we make the most revenue, which days we make the least amount of revenue, which days we have the highest conversion rate in terms of date and time, and lowest conversion rate, what days of the month. And it was quite an interesting exercise. And I think for us, we've learned when to run specials to maximize profit, when not to run specials to not bleed profit unnecessarily. So Jack, I think 100% if you can use AI, but you need to give AI the data, the proper data, and then ask it like all these different kinds of questions. However, again, the forecasting side of things can be very difficult to predict because forecasting is dependent on your marketing skills and budget. So when it comes to a direct-to-consumer brand, especially online, nothing controls the variable of growth as much as the actual paid advertising and marketing strategy. So forecasting is actually almost like a bit of a skewed mechanism, because if you're not going to spend more money on marketing, you're not going to keep growing. right? So if you're spending 10K a month and you get a 5x ROAS, you're going to make 50K back. Now, if you look at AI, and AI would say, well, we had 40 grand's worth of growth. And you go, well, let's forecast if we grow with 40K every single month. It's going to be like, wow, in a year's time, we're going to be millionaires. But the reality is that it's not taking everything into context to understanding what's creating that growth. And I think if you need to prompt AI and give it the necessary information on what has contributed to the growth and how are you going to be distributing that moving forward from a forecast point of view. So you're going to say, I spent 100K on marketing and we're planning on increasing our budget by 10%. However, there is also a probability that the ROAS might decline 10% every month the more we spend. So let's now start to forecast, the hindsight, taking the hindsight data and start to forecast this. I think AI can really help you with that. But again, it'll be as good as the prompt that you give it. And my bottom line is make sure to give it all the necessary context and as much nuances as possible in order to get the most accurate forecast prediction.
I had one other insight which blew my mind a while back, which was we were running a huge Google campaign and a huge Facebook campaign, and I looked at the costs of how many sales were coming from Google and how many were coming from Facebook. And Facebook, I think the ad budget was split evenly, and Facebook was giving me, I think, triple the sales. So basically only 25% of the sales were coming from Google. And so we figured if we turn off the Google ads, then we will lose 25% of the sales, but we'll be saving 50% of our ad budget. Does it make sense? So the cost per acquisition was really high on Google. And what was interesting is we turned off the Google ads, and all of a sudden our sales actually tanked closer to 50%. And it makes perfect sense now. It's like when you're on blogs and you're everywhere where Google ads show up, you're seeing the ad, but often Google ads are put in places where, I don't know, people probably maybe in a different mindset. And when you're on Facebook, you see a very visual ad, bang, like in the middle of your feed, which is very difficult to ignore. You have to intentionally scroll past it. And so we found, or we believe that a lot of people, in fact, we looked at the Google attribution, what's it called? You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, it's just called attribution window, yeah.
Yeah, the attribution window. And we could see how many touch points people were hitting. And I know that at the time they said that people have 8 touch points, but the guys who were buying our program had something closer to 12 and 15 different touch points before making a purchase. Anyway, so turning off Google actually helped tank our Facebook campaigns as well. Something to be careful about.
It's like one channel complements the other, right? That's it. It works together as a soccer team. And there's a video of mine called Omnichannel Marketing on YouTube. If you go to my YouTube channel and you search Omnichannel Marketing, I'm sure you'll find it. But it's really me explaining that all these channels, SMS, email, Google Ads, LinkedIn, Twitter, depending on obviously the type of product that you have and the channels that you pick because of that product, all work together like a soccer team, So, you might run the Google Ads to the actual website. Someone might go, no, thank you, I'm not ready to buy. And that could be seen as the midfielder making a play. And then what happens is that the ball comes back, it hits the post, and there's a striker that comes and it just taps it in. And that striker could be the Facebook ad that's seen as a remarketing ad. Now, Facebook's going to go, we scored the goal. But Google's like, yeah, but I passed you the ball. Or I am the one that actually took the shot and it hit the post. And if it didn't hit the post, you wouldn't be able to score the goal. So in essence, it's understanding that all these channels really work together. However, the dilemma that a lot of small business owners face themselves or find themselves in is that they don't actually have the budget to execute all channels at once. So this conversation today is purely, obviously, for those individuals who are in a predicament of choosing the first channel. And how would that look like? And I think obviously in the ideal world, we want to advertise everywhere, but I'd say Facebook and Google is where you can start. Then there's questions like, how much money should you be spending on these channels? I'd say 10 grand a month is enough to collect really good data from. So if you want to do both, then you need 20K a month. If you want to do one, you can start with 10K a month. Always also incorporate email and SMS into your strategies. That's a lot cheaper to do. And I would just give people the advice just to always look into that. Email automations, welcoming people to the community, welcoming people to the newsletter subscription, or welcoming people to the giveaway that you've signed up, and educating them further about the brand. Automations, if people left their carts and didn't buy, to remind them about the product and its benefits and why it's amazing, and maybe giving them a discount at the end to see if you can nudge them over the fence. But yeah, I think that is really the conversation for today, and I hope there was value in it for everyone.
Jeez, Jandre, it was great sitting listening to you chat. I felt like the interviewer, yeah. Last question here, which is a very good question, actually, considering everything we chatted about, and that's from Buzwe. He just says, like what we're talking about in general, as the last comment, like, does this apply to leads, or is it just specifically for sales, for selling online, or does this also apply to lead collection?
I do think it applies to lead collection too. The formula might be a little bit different in my mind, actually. I'm not saying it won't work for lead generation. It's predominantly designed for direct-to-consumer products, this framework, to be honest with you. But if you had to generate leads, you can follow the same approach. You need to start with, are people searching for, let's say you're an agency, right? And like us, I started on Google Ads. That's where I got my first leads, and I ran Google Ads really well. So for V8 Media, we started with Google Ads because that is essentially where people were looking for agencies. The only issue was, and this is also a nuance, is that like insurance and the agency space is extremely competitive. So cost per clicks are like 30 to 40, 50 bucks. And then at some point I decided to go to Facebook because of the fact that I just felt like I couldn't do this any better. I was spending 10, 20 grand a month at the time. We didn't have a big budget. And then we went and said, cool, I felt like I've tried to do this better. And because I can't do it any better, I'm not going to do more of it. So therefore, I'm going to try something new. And then in 2021, we started running Facebook ads, and it just crushed it. So this is also how we've started learning these frameworks. So we went onto Facebook, where the demand was there, but it was just too competitive. And that's why we chose Facebook. So that's actually a little nuance that we can build into the framework. And maybe, Jono, we can refine that and maybe share it with people, and we can make it even better. But that was just a top of mind conversation for today.
Yeah,
and was valuable.
Yeah, I think you've added a ton of value there. There's some gold in there, and I think it simplified the question. I think what's a relief there is to know that there is actually a way to figure it out, and that there isn't as much guesswork involved as people might have originally thought. So I think you certainly detonated a few bombs there. Yeah.
Cool. Well, I mean, let's actually spend some time maybe on that framework and make it better for people, and hopefully it helps some people make better decisions in their businesses too.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Jandre. What a pleasure. Cool. Another cracker. Yeah, looking forward to next week.
Yeah, lekker. Next week I'll do the interview.
Yeah, looking forward to it, man. All right, all the best.
Thank you so much. Much love to you. Have a great Thursday and a great rest of your weekend.
Cheers, guys. Thanks for listening.
Cheers.